Hi everyone, and welcome back to your favorite or probably least favorite Twitter user's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be discussing a topic that has garnered a lot of attention recently on YouTube, and I'm sure many of you know that topic is Xenogenders. First, I would like to start off with explaining why Xenogenders are necessary for many folks to begin with. But before I get into all that, many folks have never even heard of a Xenogender. So let me explain. Xenogenders are essentially non-binary genders that can't be described using concepts we typically associate with gender, such as femininity, masculinity, androgyny, and so on. Some xenogenders include cat gender, which is generally used to describe a gender that is associated with cats or strongly connected to cats. Star gender, which is typically a gender used to describe a gender associated with stars or in some way connected to stars. And then there's ADHD gender, Audi-gender, and other neurogenders. ADHD gender, Audi-gender, and other neurogenders are not genders used by folks who just like the aesthetic of ADHD, autism, and other disabilities. These are genders used by folks who actually have these disabilities and feel these disabilities impact their gender in some sort of way. There's a reason that the overwhelming majority of xenogender folks, including myself, are neurodivergent. Neurodivergent folks often have very different experiences of gender than neurotypical folks. Neurodivergent folks often have a more difficult time grasping concepts like masculinity and femininity, and can have difficulty understanding what it means to feel feminine or feel masculine or feel like a man or feel like a woman or even feel agender or feel androgynous. It could also be that someone just doesn't feel they fit in with neurotypical men, women, non-binary folks, and so on, or even that hyperfixations and attachments influence their gender identity. Or it could even be some combination of all of that or something else entirely. This isn't to say that neurotypical folks can't be xenogender too, for a variety of reasons. However, these are just some of the reasons why the neurodivergent folks more often identify as xenogenders. Now, to get to the real question of why is it necessary? It's necessary for the same reason a trans woman identifying as a woman is necessary, or a non-binary person identifying as non-binary is necessary, or a trans man identifying as a man is necessary. It's necessary because that's what makes the person most comfortable. It's necessary because identifying in the way society would like that person to makes them uncomfortable. It's really no different. Even if a xenogender person is to only identify in part as xenogender, and then in part as a woman, man, agender, or so forth, that is still necessary too. Just how it's necessary for a multigender man and woman to identify that way, or a multigender man and agender person. To take away someone's comfort just because you don't understand it or you find it to be silly is not fair at all. How is this any different than when folks try to do this to trans women because they don't understand it or think it's silly, or try to do this to non-binary folks because they don't understand it or think it's silly, or trans men, or gender fluid folks, or genderqueer folks, or so on and so forth. Something else that is often said in response to xenogender folks simply existing is that they make a mockery of trans folks. And quite frankly, when the overwhelming majority of xenogender folks also identify as trans in some sort of other non-xenogender way, this argument makes absolutely zero sense. How is it any different from when exclusionists tell us that non-binary folks are making a mockery of trans folks? Or how is it any different than when trans medicalists tell us trans folks who don't suffer enough are making a mockery of trans folks? Or how is it even different to when TERFs tell us that trans women are making a mockery of women? Just because somebody within your identity group is doing something differently, or in a way you don't understand, or even in a way that makes you uncomfortable, doesn't mean that they're making a mockery of you. Who are you to draw the line between what is a real and what is a fake trans person? How are you any different from any of those other aforementioned exclusionary groups? If we are to say that xenogender folks make a mockery of trans folks, why don't any of those other groups make a mockery of trans folks and women too? As I'm sure you can see, this is not a road we want to go down. At the end of the day, self-expression that isn't bigoted, culturally appropriative, or unnecessarily violent is never a bad thing. It's liberatory. To deny folks of that self-expression is shackling, which trans folks know all too well. And then we have the folks who say, but doesn't this make the LGBTQIA+ community look bad? Let me tell you right now, the vast majority of anti-trans and anti-queer bigots have never in their life heard of a xenogender. And yet here we are with all these anti-trans bigots, anti-queer bigots, and conservative, labor, liberal, Democrat, Republican politicians all around the world trying to legislate us out of existence. I mean, we've seen anti-queer folks focus attacks on Pete Buttigieg of all people, a white, Christian, veteran man from Indiana. That's about as traditional as you can get. Clearly, xenogender folks are not the problem here. The problem is the folks being bigoted towards queer folk. To blame victims of queer oppression for queer oppression does nothing to actually combat queer oppression. To blame queer folks for queer oppression rather than those actually perpetuating it simply holds us back from actually achieving liberation. We must stick together and do the real work of educating, learning, mutual aid, direct action, and so on in order to truly achieve a world where we can be liberated. And that's all I gotta say for today. Thank you for watching as always. And follow me on Twitter at IsabellaScarlett2, Instagram at IsabellaScarlett_, and BlueSky at IsabellaScarlett. Have a good day. Bye.